Benjamin Dimmitt photographs wetlands, forests, and the landscape using film and a medium format camera. He uses his camera to investigate interdependence, competition, survival, and mortality in the natural environment. The University of Georgia Press published a book of Benjamin's climate change project, An Unflinching Look in fall 2023 on coastal ecosystems. His series on saltwater intrusion in Florida's wetlands has been widely exhibited and praised for its stark beauty and urgent messaging. When I saw it, and this may well be heresy, but if you've seen the film where the crawdads sing, that it very much felt like that sort of landscape. So yeah, it drew me in immediately. But as an educator, he teaches photography and inspires others to engage with environmental issues through visual storytelling. I can't think of anything more important at the moment than how we communicate the changes to our climate, and the photographs that Benjamin creates do that in a way I haven't seen before. So you're very welcome. And I just wondered if we could take you back a little bit and understand a bit about your upbringing, your early experiences, and what shaped your passion for photography and the environment. Did the environment come first, or photography came first? How did that all come together?
I hadn't thought about which came first. I have an older brother and lived in a neighborhood in Florida that was on a bay, and the other kids in the neighborhood all lived on the water or nearby, and that's where we went to play as 6, 8, 10, 12-year-old kids, and we couldn't really get into any trouble except that we were often playing out in the water, which had oyster beds. Somehow we never lacerated our feet beyond repair, but we were given sneakers. We had designated sneakers for going into the bay and the mud. This was along the waterfront, and there were mudflats and mangroves, which grow in tidal zones that help stabilize shorelines. And that was all we needed. There were still undeveloped areas around us, and even a golf course down the road that were part of our play area as we saw it. And we walked to school, so we walked everywhere, and it was all our backyard. And I never really thought about really what that meant for us, but it did give us a huge area to play in, and without any adults around. My mother was a painter, and that really has probably the biggest impact on me, because she gave me a camera, but just a little Instamatic cheap plastic thing. And so I was photographing where I was. She also used cameras, not strictly, but she would paint from a snapshot. And all of this went to the drugstore or the camera shop to get processed. We didn't do any of it at home. And I would look at her paintings and think about how they interpreted where we were and where we played. And I asked her why she took the photographs, and she said so that she could bring the photographs back into the studio and work from them. But mostly I was curious about her paintings because they were abstract. And I said, I don't know what this is a picture of. And she informed me, turned around, looked down at me, and said, pictures don't have to be of anything, Benjamin. They just are. So that meant that it was up to here and here in me and in her and other artists to make the image, and that they were our creations, even if for me it just meant staring at something for 10 or 15 minutes and enjoying what that looks like. Mm-hmm. So she gave me cameras, and I starting when I gave the little cheap ones, but eventually 35 millimeter film cameras, which and Pink had got a Honeywell Pentax in 1970. So that kind of set me free, because then I had something that was real, not a little Kodak brownie or Instamatic. I think she was the most important person in impacting me until, let's say, I got to college.
And you focus on black and white photography. And I just wondered why that was your chosen medium. And I think I read that you still use film. And I just wondered again why that over digital.
I own a couple of digital cameras. They're in the
Okay.
studio where I put them 10 years ago when I moved into the house, in the exact same drawer. I haven't moved an inch. Um, I prefer black and white because that's what I started with.
Yeah.
And secondly, I can make the prints. I can do the work myself. And something that a friend of mine and I joke about is, can you hand me your digital file? With film photography, I can hand you my print, but more importantly, I can hand you my negative. It exists in the real world.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I take it into the studio. I develop the film in the studio, and I make prints in the darkroom. And the thing that I've realized lately, as friends continue and with their digital, and I continue with my old tools, is that my old tools don't really die. The digital photography world, specifically the camera makers and all the accessories built around it, thrive on obsolescence.
Yes.
And designing a new software and a new this and a new that, and that keeps them in business. And the very bad first digital camera that I ever had was a really good example. It was no good after a year, and partly because I was buying something cheap, because I was just starting with the digital. I was using that for jobs, the digital. The film camera I bought used in 1985, and I'm still using it. It was probably built or made in the 50s. It's a Hasselblad, which is as you may know, Swedish camera body and a German lens. And in all the years I've had them, I've had to fix one camera once. And I take additional from backups with me in my bag when I go out in the canoe in the swamp or go for a walk in the swamp to shoot. And I'm always glad to have the backup, but I never need it. It's just smart to do that. And really, digital for me is about a color choice, because you can always convert digital file to black and white. But they require going to a lab to get good prints made. I don't want to buy all the gear is necessary to print digital. And once I scan my negatives, they become digital files, and I learned to do that pretty well with the book. All 88 or whatever there are images need to be scanned to go in there, and I know Photoshop, and I have taught Photoshop. I just like black and white photography because it is it's pared down. It's the essence. There's no color, as color is to me unnecessary information, and it impacts the image in a way that is, to me, irrelevant to the subject by nature. This color brings in another layer of meaning that is not necessary. And I can always default to good old Ansel Adams, and that is that it's in that whole school of landscape photography that it is more, I say more truthful, but it when photography was created, they didn't have such slow film that the only thing they could shoot were landscapes. So they made, big cameras that were very slow and heavy. And the 19th century landscape photography and 20th century landscape photography has primarily been black and white. And I am just a landscape photographer. It's I am an environmentalist, but primarily I'm just a landscape photographer.
I do sometimes feel that youngsters today, my children, etc., sort of missed out on the whole thing of shooting a reel of film, a roll of film, taking to the chemist drugstore, waiting a few days to get back, and for you to open the envelope and trying to remember those things. Whereas, we just don't have that anymore. But to see on my phone and my camera, probably thousands of photographs, but none of them get released as such. You sort of look at them on the screen, and this little sort of 2-inch by 2-inch box. But there was something about going to the chemist, the drugstore, and getting the photographs back. And odd. How did we capture that? And because you don't look at them again, you don't crop them, edit them, tune them, whatever. You just go to look at them. So I do think there's a lot to be said for that, especially when you're doing your own developing and it sort of comes to life as you're watching it. That must be a fascinating experience.
Well, what's funny is the real aha moment is when you have run through the chemistry and the wash, and there's no urgency anymore. You can take the lid off the tank and unspool it and see, in my case, 12 frames and go, and that's and it's physical because you've put your hands in the chemistry, pulled it out, and gone over to a good light, which I keep in the dark room for this purpose, and go, and no, or, whatever. And it's the same as going out to the car in the parking lot outside of the chemist's and looking at the little prints, except that's just the beginning, the wet film. And, then comes contact sheets, which you're flying, then making decisions about which frames you want to make. And you become very, intimate's not the right word. You learn your negative, your image each time you handle it. Instead of using a monitor, you actually have something physical, and it goes through different states. You make a small print to get to know the negative, and then you move to the bigger prints, and you have notes, and then you make an exhibit size print. And if the situation presents itself and you're going to be exhibiting, then I get a good scan and then take it to a printer who will do a big digital print for 3 feet square or something larger, a mural. All of it's an adventure each step.
And does it make you more thoughtful and considered about the composition of each photograph? I guess I don't know if it's a benefit or the negative. With digital, you just keep clicking away until your 1 gigabyte, 1 terabyte memory card's filled up with stuff, and you just click. There's not as much maybe thought. So presumably you don't want to go out and take 1,000 shots when you're out for an afternoon. So are you more thoughtful, patient, considered about the shots that you do take?
Oh yeah. It was always the difference between like I said, a 35 millimeter digital camera, even with a motor drive. My Hasselblad doesn't have a motor drive. I'm very deliberate when I shoot. And the photographing in the swamp for so many years, the photographs in the book span 47 years. That's a long history of shooting there and learning about how to do that, because you're often in a canoe and you can't put a tripod down, so you have to be smart about how to do that. But I shoot usually only 1 frame. I look, especially if I'm on ground, not necessarily dry ground, in a swamp ground. And I'm sure that there are no cottonmouths or alligators at my knees. I will look at the photograph, look through the viewfinder, um, take reading for the handheld meter, and try and understand what I'm missing, and shoot one frame, and then pack it up, put it on my shoulder, walk on, or walk back to the canoe and go to another place. Shooting from a canoe is a different. I had to learn how to do this. This was, and I ended up using high-speed medium format film, 240 film that I could shoot from the canoe, but it yields a different kind of negative because it's not the perfect exposure. You're shooting just to get the shot without rocking the boat and getting camera movement in there. So in those cases with where I'm in the canoe and shooting from the canoe, I might do more than one frame in case there's camera movement or the canoe movement. No, it's generally very deliberate. It is nothing like what you see people doing in advertisements where it's bang, 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 bang. Have a roll of film that's 12 frames, and then it's a nuisance, or it's have to go find shade and reload the camera. Lean over and throw a shadow over, and you still get flare on the edges to film.
So do you think it was the growing up in Florida and that sort of exploration and nothing being off limits? Do you think that's what drew you to focus on using your photographs to tell stories about the environment? What was it that pulled you towards the environmental messaging? Because I mean, people haven't seen them, and I'll put some links in the notes. The photographs as themselves are beautiful works of art, but there's a very strong environmental message, especially when you look at a space from 40 years ago, look at the same space today. There's been very physical changes. So I just wondered what it was that drew you to the environmental side of things.
Well, I first went to the swamp, the Chazawiska National Wildlife Refuge, 70 miles north of Tampa, in 1977. And I saw it then or it was to me then, something unique because I'd grown up at that point, roads weren't good, 2 hours south, and I'd never seen a Florida coast without a beach. So this was all lush. There were no sand dunes, no sea oats. This was wetlands, miles and miles of water with trees growing out of the water, and very few places where you could get out and walk around. I had photographed there a lot before really in the 80s and 90s, and I started a project in 2004 because I had learned about climate change in college, and that would have been in the 70s, and we were told all these things were going to happen, and this and that, and seas would rise, storms would worsen, everything that is happening. And I felt that this place was vulnerable, so I started a project, and one of my favorite places to photograph for the project was the Chazawiska. But I also covered and learned about a lot of other smaller areas in Florida that have been set aside, mostly state parks and other sorts of preserved areas, and photographed. I had a good body of work, and then my favorite subject, the Chazawiska, suddenly I go there in 2014, had been in 2 years, and so many of the trees were dead, and I didn't understand that. And I made a lot of 35 millimeter photographs because back then I always carried 35 millimeter camera around. I never really used it that much. And made some quick prints, and I then scanned because I didn't have a film scanner, so I scanned them on a document scanner and sent the images to scientists in the Tampa Bay area, which is where I grew up, and said, "What is going on here? What's happening to this coastline where there's so many dead trees?" And the different scientists sent me along to different people. And I finally ended up with, at the University of South Florida in St. Petersburg. And he said, "Oh, that's climate change. That's saltwater intrusion. You should show those photographs to my student who's studying this and making applications. He's producing papers to submit to organizations that study this sort of thing. He'd love to see the photographs," and I did, and that's the guy who wrote for the book. That is, being an academic press, the University of Georgia said, "This has to be accurate and truthful and for real." And I called Matt, and Matt said, "Yeah, I'd love to write for the book," because he had studies, and the state of Florida does flyover photography and satellite photography that can be downloaded by scientists. And he's the most important person in the book, as far as I'm concerned, because that's the truth, and those are facts. And I was very happy when I got referred to him, so that I had somebody with science that would work for the book, and they write an essay for the book. But it happened to me. I mean, I was going there anyway. I was already photographing there, and then it became, then it started degrading, and I thought to myself, "Am I going to now photograph this? Is this my subject?" And I said, "Yes, this is my subject. I'm not taking beautiful photographs of a pristine place anymore because it's not pristine." And it was going down for a global situation. It's going down pretty slowly. And I started in 2014 and stopped the photography in 2022 when the University of Georgia Press said, "We kind of need you to send us your image files because everything else is written and all set. We need the images, Benjamin." And I realized, that this was a finite story. What I was telling was a short-term story, and I never felt myself. I didn't see myself as someone who was trying to change the world. It was more about me learning that future time when climate change would be changing things had arrived. It was now. And this is what it looks like. I have evidence of this thing. And that, I guess, makes me an environmentalist. But it was as simple as that. I'm not incredibly righteous about things. I know beyond the science part of it how we got to this point, because it has a lot to do with greed and stealing, taking excessive amount of water out of the aquifer for business interests. And there's a whole dirty side to this that I don't go into in the book. But it has to do with the state being overly generous to campaign contributors as far as how much water they're permitted to pull out of the aquifer. So when you take the water out and use it for golf courses or bottled water companies, it has an impact because that water the water you take out of the aquifer allows the Gulf of Mexico's water to go into the aquifer. You can't do one thing without impacting other things.
And so I hadn't realized about the impact of, and I don't know why, but I hadn't thought about the impact of salt water, and I know the runoff from fertilizer used on golf courses till I read your work. And so is that in the situation that has now resulted in, is that can we come back from that, or that their trees are dead and that part of the swarm's dead and that's it? We just need to stop doing any more of it, but we can't fix what's already happened.
All of the above. It would be we can't fix what's been done.
Mhm.
There are things we can stop doing, which would be great. I'm happy to discuss those. But the bigger picture is what I became aware of, and that's that the seas, because of everything we know, the sea level is rising, glaciers are melting because it's much hotter here than it used to be. And that is because of environmental issues that have to do with internal combustion engines and other ways in which we warm big factories in which we warm the globe and melt the ice. And so the pressure from melting glaciers it will continue to go on as the years pile up and this water pushes inland. And the Chaswitzka is perfectly flat. There is if you throw a big stone out into the Gulf of Mexico, those waves are going to come all the way in and go up into the aquifer, go up the creeks and then down into the aquifer. There's a lens between the salt and the fresh, and it continues to move up the inland. And the villages, which is the huge and very ugly area, shares the same spring, the same aquifer, and all their pollutants, their fertilizer, et cetera, goes right into the drinking water. And that's it's not really very fixable. It would be good to pull less water out of the aquifer, but that will allow more salt water to come in.
Yeah. And I'm not necessarily expecting you to have the answer to this. It'd be great if you did, but why do you think some people either don't believe climate change is as serious as it is, or maybe or just don't care? I mean, we've heard from the incoming president, incoming government, that I think environmental legislation, if anything, is going to be weakened, and drill baby drill, those sort of things. And is it just that people don't have empathy for future generations, or they don't think they can fix it as an individual? I just always struggle with the idea that, well, why don't people just do the right thing? And I don't know.
Boy, I wish I had an answer for that.
I agree.
Because I think one of the things that I have to always remember, it's incredibly complicated.
Yeah.
It took me quite a while, and I continued to make my photographs, even though I didn't have a grasp of all of it, to get a grasp of all this. But doing the research for the book was very helpful and very enlightening. And the editor at the University of Georgia Press said to me, do more research, add more research, see, learn why this is happening and where it's happening, so that your book is not just focused on this one area. Well, it is focused on just this one area, which is very complicated, but I don't even recall all of it. I mean, I was learning about the Mekong Delta in Vietnam. I mean, it's about because I'm of a certain age. They have horrible crops. They can't grow anything there. It's on the delta of a river, and there are islands in the Pacific where the saltwater intrusion is not into their drinking water, and that without fresh water, they're going to have to leave. It's everywhere. Miami was thinking of building a big seawall around the whole city, but water will come around the backside and go in. It's unstoppable. And now, the cat is out of the bag. I have stepped back a couple of times and thought about it, and I've ran it by the scientists that I worked with on the book. And he wrote me an email that was very straightforward. This is only going to happen if the highest levels of government around the globe commit to doing this. Without the rest of it, the industries aren't going to stop. Making an electric car is about the biggest thing that's happened here. I'm not optimistic. Unless I live for really much longer than I think I'm going to, I don't see this ending in my lifetime. It goes all the way down to the micro, around other users of the spring shed in Florida. The water is being given, the state's giving the water away to bottled water companies, which are Coca-Cola and huge companies getting free water, which they then put in plastic bottles and sell or ship around the world, relabel it. That's not. I think people should have drinking water, but all of that has an impact.
It's very hard. I mean, because it's one of those areas where all of the money as such is with the companies that want to extract things from the earth, whether it's an oil company, a gas company, a soft drinks company, whatever the companies are. So they have all the money, they lobby government, they pour the money into persuading people that this is okay, and we'll fund your campaign, all those sort of things. And on the other side, the sort of people that want things to be better, but there's not a sort of company or huge industry that feels it's benefiting. Even lots of green energy comes from oil companies now. So it's really hard when you've got all that money. We don't have lobbying in the UK in the same way that you do in the US. And if you're in a state where somebody's funding your campaign, or it's a state that's an oil state or a coal state or whatever, it's very hard to go, no, is it hard? It's, in politics, I guess it's very different to go against that. And it certainly feels that for the next 4 years, we're not going to be seeing much positive progress in that space, I wouldn't have thought.
You're absolutely right. This is not, if you want to put it in certain terms, it's not a winnable fight. And the misinformation and confusion that you mentioned is important to the campaign to keep most of, not all, conversation about this under wraps. I had someone open doors to me or windows into how the situation in Florida and the water management districts operate, and how easy it is for them and the powers that be to get what they want. And it's misinterpreting or it's misleading, this and that. They're getting money from big developers for just one, or agriculture, which is still, while there's still dry land in Florida, people are going to grow things. And all that money, you can't buy the truth. You can't outspend that. And you can't tell everyone. Florida, I don't have the exact number here, but I think I know it's in my book. Like hundreds and hundreds of people move to Florida every day. And there aren't enough natural resources for that. And no one's telling them not to come. That doesn't help the chambers of commerce. And I've been asked, why did you do this? And the reason is no one else is telling this story. And it was a naive thought of mine that I could, not so much change, I can show what climate change looks like there. And that's really all I was trying to do. And since I had all the photographs that I'd taken over 47 years, now that it's a finished project, to show the degradation, I found it compelling. And the publisher did too. I can't sell the prints of the photographs because people don't really want to see beautifully rendered black and white photographs of dying wetlands. Learned that really quickly. But just showing that it's happening, providing evidence. And that's all I'm doing. That makes me an environmentalist. But it's a place that is near to my great big warm loving heart that is going down and going down fast. Every one of these hurricanes just pushes the saltwater further and further in.
Yeah. It's really interesting. I'm just finishing off a master's on sustainability and on behavior change, and I'm just about finishing the dissertation, which is a big relief. But one of the things I've been doing for the last, it feels like forever, is going through so many different academic sources and research, and so some wonderful researchers out there, but it's not necessarily written to engage. It's written very, very detailed, incredibly factual, very well sourced, all those sort of things. But what I'm trying to do now is how do we get the message across, though, to people? The message obviously isn't going to be by getting somebody to read an academic piece of literature. And and it was very timely when I saw your photographs. This is a very different way of getting a message across. It's very visual. It's like, that's what it was. This is what it is. Okay. And immediately you have the information that might take pages and pages and pages to write. And the fact you have those alongside the academic sort of support makes it really valuable. So I do think the power of photography, art, all those different things are so strong in how we communicate. Hopefully we see more people, showing those photographs like those and other ones. Are there, if you had the chance now, are there other areas you'd like to photograph? Or is your heart, it's Florida, that's what I know, that's what I love, that's who I am?
There are other parts of the state where I could find places that I would love to shoot. And it's funny, at this age, I don't want to say calculate, but just think about how long it takes to photograph a subject intelligently or deeply or passionately. And then the whole book process, which is at least 2 years. And I am 70 years old, and what do I want to devote my remaining years to? And it would have to be of Florida. And it would be one of the things that I've already shot it are mangroves, which are a sort of they're a plant that grows on in brackish water. It can take salt and it can take fresh, and they are all over the Everglades and a lot of other warm zones all around the globe. They're becoming very, very important. And I've been fascinated by them since, again, experience in college where we learned about mangroves. So I realized recently that I have over 30 years of photographs of mangroves shot primarily in Florida, but also in the Caribbean and a lot in the Everglades. So there are, the further south you go, the closer to the equator, the more mature the trees are. They're not young ones that are just reestablishing themselves after a really bad hurricane, which mangroves help stabilize shorelines in hurricanes or rising sea levels. But anyway, it's all very complicated balancing act. And I've got 30 years worth of photographs. They're on my website, and I'd love to do a book with that. And it's my scientist friend who helped with the book. I learned as I wrote him and asked him about mangrove, a question about mangrove. He said that's what he's working on now. The government, he's graduated and he got his PhD, and he's working for being employed by the United States government doing research. And he likes research from aerial and the NASA, the satellites. And he's been working on that. He said, yes, they're great, but they're also very vulnerable as the sea levels rise faster than they grow. So that's a project that I'd like to see through to fruition. I have no idea if anyone would ever buy prints of that work, but this is not something I'm doing for the money.
So if someone enjoyed photography, was interested in the environment, what advice could you give an aspiring photographer? What should they think about, look for, focus on, spend their time on?
Would that someone be someone who is interested in photographing the environment?
Yeah, and it's somebody that has a passion for that and is interested and recognizes that photography is a good means to communicate. Is it about focus and longevity in one particular area? Is it about a much more broad brush? What suggestions could you give to that photographer?
I would say the first thing is this is a really straightforward thing that's from a photographic point of view. You make your best photographs of a subject that you're very passionate about. And I would not encourage anyone who wanted to get into environmental photographing the environment to pick as a subject something you're lukewarm about. And that is so true for me. So I would say research, learn about it, and be dumb. Write to the scientists at a university near you. You do your research, make sure you get to the right person, and let them, as we say here, explain some of it to you and what you're looking at, what it is you're looking at, and get a background and on information, the facts, the science, and then leave that. When I'm out in the swamp, I don't think about photography. I have a destroyed place in front of me. It's really hard to forget what the subject is. So make sure when you're photographing that you are keeping in mind what you're trying to say, instead of loving this line or that vista or what have you. Make sure that they're integrated, and having a lot of knowledge or some knowledge about the place and the subject is really, really helpful. And the more you learn, the better. I don't have a science degree. I just had 40 some odd years of going to a place and watching it ball. It's a nice way of saying die. And don't worry so much about the equipment that you're using, because it's keeping it simple is the best thing you can do. And you'll learn. You're going to go in with some level of knowledge, and after a couple of years, you'll come out with a lot more knowledge. And it's a learning process always. I had no idea how to photograph from a canoe with, you just don't do that, but you have to solve these small problems as you go along.
Do you still get excited today when you know you're going out for a day's photography and you're set up and you're you know you're going to, is it still exciting? Is it still
Yeah.
okay?
It's, I haven't someone say it, and I think it applies to a lot of other things. It was one of the few times in our life when we can be thrilled by just looking at something and both with the camera, but then also you've created your own little world in your viewfinder.
Mhm.
And that by itself, I think that's one of the things that I recall doing this a lot as a very little boy, was walking around and making pictures without a camera, just looking at something and moving to the left, moving to the right, dipping my head down. It's the same with the camera. You're making something, even if you don't take the picture. You're creating something, and that's the best part of all of it. At the end of the day, I would, in the Chasowitz guy, we'd have dinner and glass of wine, and then I go to bed, and every photograph that I shot was rolling through my head. It should be fun. It should be something you're passionate about.
Did you ever try and follow your mum into creating abstract work from your photographs, or you're a photographer pure of heart?
Well, she encouraged me to take art classes in college.
Mhm.
It's hard for me to discern what the impacts are that she had on me as a child, but she was very encouraging and supportive. But that's what mothers do. I believe in most instances. The feedback was great. Giving me a camera, coming to the exhibits the few exhibits I had in college. And she passed away before I was 22. So what she created was not, hadn't come to fruition. Partially it had. I mean, she came to my thesis exhibit in college, and made it. It was nice where she came when the gallery space was not jammed with other students. She and a friend, one of her friends, who came and saw the exhibit, and we had lunch. Interestingly, next year I'm going to be having a large exhibit of the prints from this body of work at that same college. It'll be either 50 or 60 years later that I'll be exhibiting this whole work, and I'm excited about that.
Absolutely. How do you make sure you don't feel overwhelmed by the subject matter? So you've obviously been there and seen the damage that's done, seen what's happened. How do you stop yourself feeling overwhelmed or distressed by what you're viewing?
Maybe I was going to say maybe my skin is too thick, but I don't believe that's the case.
So,
I think that it's more about being excited by what I'm doing and feeling passionate about it. This is my native landscape. This is what, as a 6-year-old, I walked through and enjoyed and found solace in. And we go and hang out there even without my posse from the neighborhood. And it's a place, those places that I photographed, generally speaking, or most of the time, are places that I like being. And I think that's important if you're working on a subject. Again, it's you need to be photographed from places that you have strong feelings for. Or in the case of climate change, you have strong feelings against. That you want to show facts. And I've been given a hard time by some people that the photographs are too beautiful. And I honestly say I do not know how to make ugly photographs. Is there an ugly lens that I reach into my backboard, put that on and go,
ugly filter, yes.
got it. This is so ugly. I'm going to just shoot a whole roll right here. And that was in some deep discussions I've had. I've been asked, once you saw that the place was dying, did you change how you photographed it? I said, no. What do I just take this hat off and put another hat on and start making ugly pictures of a place that I know and love and am sad to see dying? No. That's why when I got the idea to show the side-by-side photographs before and after, that helped me a lot because then I knew I was providing context for all of this and showing that, those before and after shots were definitely taken by the same photographer as the guy who did photographs of the pristine places and these devastated wetlands, treeless wetlands. I tried to be consistent. There's no certain hat that I put on, and I compose. That's the best part of the process. You just look through the viewfinder and making your own little world. But I didn't become a different photographer now.
And I think that's really important because people will look at something that's beautifully shot, created, whatever, no matter what the subject matter, and it almost helps them to see, I would have thought. Whereas if it's an ugly photograph or people aren't going to want to look at it for as long. So I do 100% agree. And I think that the side by side it really makes that clear. But even the shots that stand alone that you look at, I think, wow, there's almost the beauty of the tragedy, really. And there is something incredibly beautiful about a dead tree or a twisted branch, whatever. Not beauty in terms of how it happened, but in terms of the aesthetic and the feel, look of it. So when you have your exhibition, your sort of almost 50-year anniversary exhibition, what do you hope people will take away from spending time with the photographs? What feeling or message do you think people will hear?
I have lots of feelings about returning to the place where I learned about climate change. That doesn't mean that 18 to 22-year-old kids are going to be moved because I studied there 60 years ago, whatever it was. That's 60, give me 40. I think this is possible, that you can go into something that's horrifying or depressing and make compelling images from that, that even old guys can make good photographs with old tools. And I can't go be someone else. And, that the head of the art department there wants this. He doesn't want me to get jiggy and rethink the whole thing. One thing I will do is there's one spot in the swamp, but that the house that I stayed in, the cabin that I stayed in when I visited, somebody has another house nearby, and they have a boat, and he built a roof. So it's a boat shed, and he built a little ladder so you can go up and beyond the roof of the boat shed and have a nice panorama. And I have photographed, and it's in the book, a 4-page gatefold, the same view taken over a span of probably only 15 or 20 years. But I have a lot of other shots from up there, not just 4. And I'm going to put them in a video at MP4 is a file type. And I'll have to get somebody younger to do it for me. And I'm not sure how you get the images in there. But you'll be able to see the vista, the panorama, over the course of, I think, either 6 or 8 images that would cover 20, 25 years. So that's slightly different than a print on a wall.
Yeah.
It'll roll slowly through the different photographs taken from the route. And it's pretty depressing. But that's a slightly jiggy presentation thing that I hope to do.
We have music blaring out and disco lights and things flashing as well, or no?
I think a slideshow is pretty out there. I might hang some things from the city. They're college students, and it was a liberal college. If they're teaching us in 1976 in a multidisciplinary mandatory class about climate change.
Yeah, that's a fair way back. It certainly wasn't anything on the radar, gosh, for lots of people until a long time after that. And it's distressing, but I guess validating the things that they told you then are the things that are happening today. So when will the exhibition be?
When?
Yeah.
I thought it was this year. Thankfully, I recently got in touch with the guy who runs the department now. It's going to be in 2026.
2020. Okay, we're not being back in time. Okay, 2026. Okay.
No, I don't remember the 70s. It will be 2026, and I don't have time of the year for it. I think it's easier for the head of the art department to have very simple hanging instructions and that kind of thing. But I want to make sure I'm holding the students' attention because, again, they're 18 to 22-year-olds, and they think something is great if it's super new. And I'm not super new.
No, but it's interesting because a lot of the students won't have spent time with striking black and white images. They're so used to scrolling and quick, tiny, bad resolution things on their phone that being confronted with a room, a space full of images that are beautiful and stark and that communicate and have a message to tell, that will be new to them. Because it's something that's not new to us. It's something that they haven't come across before. So almost the newness is in the classic style that you've approached, really. So yeah, it'd be interesting to see how they respond to it, and when they sort of think about things differently and how they view things. But no, it'll be a huge success, I'm sure.
And it'll be fun too. I'm going to have to talk, and it'll be interesting to consider what I want to say. If they're going to give me some award, and I don't know what that is. I haven't asked. But what do I have to say to students, from that, about this project from that perspective, except my story, which is that I learned this there.
Yeah.
If I wasn't going to that school, and in that big class, it was first thing in the morning. It seemed like it was every day, but when you're in college, 9 o'clock seemed really early. We sit in a big auditorium as opposed to a small space, and be lectured about climate change in 1972. What did we know then? I assumed all that stuff would be happening way off in the future.
That's the story, isn't it? If you hadn't been standing where they're standing 40, 50 years ago, you wouldn't be standing where you're standing today. So that the college sort of helped create that, further that interest, and then your knowledge of the space allowed you to create those images that have sort of come full circle to tell a story. So yeah, it's a good thing. It's a good thing. Thank you so much for your time. I really enjoyed it. You've done an incredible body of work.
Thank
You
you.
should be incredibly proud of what you've done, and it's a legacy. It's something that people will look at, refer to, and hopefully build on in the future. Yeah, let's hope it does encourage people to do better, because we can do better, and I think we probably want to, most of us. So it's just about doing better. But no, thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
My pleasure. Thanks for getting in touch.